Start. Good. We are now recording.
Yes.
So I'm going to call this meeting of the Metro Plan to order on December 1st. I believe the first item is a roll call.
Thank you, Chair McCarthy. I'll start with you.
I am here.
Patrice Horstman.
Yes, I am present as well, although my camera's not working, but I'm here and I can see the screen just perfectly. So thank you.
Geronimo Vasquez.
Present. Good day, everyone.
Austin Aslan.
Present.
Regina Salas.
Present.
Jesse Thompson does not appear to be in attendance at the moment. And then we have Metro Plan staff, Jeff Milebeck,
Here.
Dave Wessel,
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
myself, Rosie Ware, present, and Mandia Gonzalez I have here with me. And I see I have two others in attendance. We have Dana Biskin with Burgess and Nyepel and Ed Stillings with FHWA. Have I left anyone off the roll? Please speak now.
So I take it that Mountain Line has not appointed a new representative. Is that correct?
Chair McCarthy, I am not aware of a new appointment.
Okay. All right, Rosie, do we have any public comment today?
Chair McCarthy, no, at this time, we have not heard any member of the public that they would like to make a comment.
Okay, so, excuse me, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. And Rosie, as you know, I sent a couple very minor suggested elaborations or changes, and you sent that out a couple days ago. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments on the minutes?
I would move that our minutes be approved.
Patrice Horstman moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
And who was that? Oh, Geronimo. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. I say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? So that motion passes unanimously. Today, we don't have anything on the consent agenda. So we're going to move into general business, Roman numeral 3. And the first item is election of officers, which I guess we do once a year. As we all know, I am the chair and Patrice Horstman is the vice chair. Patrice, I believe you said at the last meeting that you did not want to continue as chair or vice chair. Is
You know,
that
given my commitments in other areas, I feel that to take on the role of the chair would be too much. And since that's really the point of the vice chair, to help out, but also then to take over the chair position for this organization, although I know that's not necessarily the case. I think it would be better to have somebody else move into that vice chair position. And I just know the guy to do that.
Are you trying to make a nomination?
Well, if you're going to do vice chair first, I would love at this time to nominate my colleague Supervisor Geronimo Vasquez to be vice chair of Metro Plan. And I can see he's got a big smile on his face.
I guess that means he's, Geronimo, would you be willing to serve as vice chair?
I would be willing to serve as vice chair, yes.
We probably should do chair first. So why don't we let that motion hang for a moment? Does anybody want to make a motion for chair? As far as I'm concerned, I could continue on as chair, or if somebody else is interested, that's absolutely fine with me. You know, we're all busy. So do we have any nominations for chair?
At this time, Mr. Chair, I would nominate yourself as chair.
All right, if it's the will of the committee, the board, I would be willing to serve. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Patrice and Austin made a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I didn't voice my opinion either way. So I guess without dissent, I will be the chair for at least one more year. Thank you. We did have a motion for Aranimo to be, from Patrice Horstman, to be our vice chair for the next year. Can we get a second on that? Well, I will second it. Do we have any more discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye. Any opposed? So congratulations, Mr. Vasquez. You are the vice chair for the next year.
All right.
I think that's good. I think it's workable. And thank you, Aranimo. I appreciate your willing to step up. Okay, so that takes us to item 3B, which is the third quarter financial report. And I believe, Mr. Malbeck, you were going to take this one.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'd like to say first in regards to the last item, thank you for continuing to serve as chair. Councilmember McCarthy, thank you for stepping into the vice chair position, Supervisor Vasquez, and for your service over the past year, Supervisor Horstman. It seems to me like we've been working together as a board for more than a year, in a good way. And I know everything kind of reformulated last year with so many new positions. So I really appreciate the engagement of this group. And one of the things that I'd like to do is provide a financial report about every quarter, just to keep the board up to speed on where we are at financially, so there are never any surprises. And this report is really pretty straightforward for the first quarter. And just to hit the highlights, we are tracking slightly under budget for salary and benefits, and that's because we did hire Mandia Gonzalez as our transportation planner. However, we budgeted for the full year and she just came on board last month. So we have some vacancy and benefit savings there. Operations are tracking to budget. We're maybe 5% over for the year, but that's because we front loaded some liability insurance. So no surprises there. Travel is tracking to budget. And capital projects, the regional transportation plan, as you'll hear more about, moving right along. And then we have transit related expenses are tracking. So I just heard some feedback, I think from somebody new who entered. Okay, just getting back to the report, capital projects, we are we have budget for some projects that we haven't started spending yet as of the first quarter. So I would say just overall, we're underspent, we're on budget, and funding that we don't spend this fiscal year can be carried forward to next fiscal year. And there is data in your packet. I'll breeze through it on screen if you like to look at the tables in terms of what our financial situation is. And then Rosie puts together these graphs, which show us how we're tracking the budget and our projection for the year. And then we also have included our line item budget if you're really interested in the details, and you can see how each line is tracking. So maybe too much information, but I would rather give you more on finances than less. So you have the information you need in your policy and governance role. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Miles. Do we have any questions for Mr. Melbeck? All right, thank you. Now we're moving on to item C, which is federal and state funding updates. Jeff, I believe you're going to do this too.
Yes, that's me. And this item is, there's no recommendation. It is tied to our strategic work plan because our goal is to bring in an additional $2 million within the next 13 months. And the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was signed by President Biden, as I know everybody is aware. As I was writing the staff report, the Build Back Better plan was advancing in the Senate. And lots of folks have been pouring through the legislation and attending trainings and having meetings to determine, what it means, what the implications, what the opportunities are for us. And then I also want to point out that the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council state funding initiative is continuing to advance. And I believe Kevin Adam, he may have arrived already. I believe he's on his way from another meeting, and hopefully he'll be here to provide an update. I have a PowerPoint presentation on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I do want to start though by recognizing Councilmember Salas and Supervisor Vasquez, soon to be Vice Chair Vasquez, for attending the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council strategic planning session in October, as well as the legislative meeting. I know you committed 2 or 3 days to that effort and travel, and really appreciate your involvement. I'm very enthusiastic about how well the program is going, and I'll talk about it more soon. I just wanted to recognize the board members for your involvement. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the agenda, and I'm going to try to share the PowerPoint presentation. And 1 second. Okay, I believe you can all see the full presentation on the big screen. And first of all, I want to provide an overview of this legislation. I want to focus on the transportation components, and then go a little bit deeper on the federal opportunities, the state opportunities, and then some of our next steps. So I put also known as AKA the bipartisan infrastructure deal. I heard it referred to yesterday as the bipartisan infrastructure law. And whatever it is, for now, I'm going to just keep using the clunky IIJA until something more elegant comes forth. And there's a $293 billion reauthorization of the FAST Act, the Surface Transportation Act, and then $550 billion in new spending. About half of that for transportation, half for non-transportation. I want to just point out that some numbers say 293.5, some say 294. So it kind of depends where I look. It is amazing to me that $1 billion can be a rounding error, but it gives you a sense of the scope of what this bill provides for. And this slide is just to give you the big picture. The dark blue on the left is everything related to transportation. The lighter blue on the right is things that aren't necessarily transportation, but more of the environment and water infrastructure. In my report, I'm going to focus less on public transit. In fact, I didn't delve into public transit because you have a very capable transit authority here, Mountain Line, who's I know, full speed ahead and pursuing their opportunities. So again, just a quick overview, and I'm going to start big and kind of go a bit deeper. Just some highlights of the funding. And you can see, just as you scan down this table, how the numbers in the billions and then how those percentages have increased. Pretty much every one of them is a double-digit increase. And then some of them that say NA, it's because the programs did not exist before. So it is a significant change. And then this, and my point is not to go through all these lines again, it's just to give you a sense of the scope. You can see if you look in the left-hand margin, all these new programs. Some of them are discretionary, some of them are formula. And it shows over the next 5 years what the total is through this legislation. There's a lot here. And my point today really is to line out the major opportunities and some of the key points. So there's formula funding, which is typically a per capita distribution, population based. And there are definitely increases in programs that already exist. There are new programs established. And to me, the key thing is we need to, I put do the math and document what we believe are appropriate distributions. Because the formula distribution for transportation funds in the state of Arizona, in my mind, still is a little bit fuzzy. And given this huge opportunity with new funding, it's to me imperative that it not be fuzzy at all, that it be very clear and be well understood by MetroPlan and by all of the other small MPOs and the state in the same way. And then there's discretionary funding. A lot of new programs, we are eligible for some of them. And one of the points I'm going to suggest, and of course, I will do whatever the board wants me to do, but my typical management approach is to determine where we are most competitive and focus our efforts. So rather than a shotgun approach, let's throw everything out there and see what sticks. Let's really go deep on some of the things that we're most likely to be successful with. So with that as an overview, I'm going to start going deeper on some of these programs. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, before I do that, see if you or any members of the board have any questions or comments.
Any thoughts from the board? Jeff, it sounds like you can keep on keeping on.
Okay. So existing formula funding. This is the Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG funding. This is what I consider general funding for transportation, $72 billion over 5 years. And historically, the state formula to MetroPlan has been flat since about 2010 at $466,000 a year. So there hasn't been an increase. And another reason for that is small metropolitan planning organizations didn't have standing, so to speak, as being identified in the earlier legislation as getting a share. So it went through the state for distribution. And this IIJA has a significant change where 50 to 200,000 population communities like MetroPlan now have a band, right? They're identified and have standing for the first time. So that's really important for us that when the funding comes out and we start to do the math and we can see what amount is supposed to be distributed to us, we have some basis for knowing what we believe should be equitable. And then I would point out this, the legislation expands project eligibility. It makes things even more flexible. And I know Ed Stillings from FHWA is here and is truly expert, and Dave Wessel has a tremendous amount of experience with this. I will say in my experience, STBG is already about the most flexible, and we have even more flexibility than we did. So my comments on this are, it's good news, do the math, confirm the entitlement, so to speak, that we should receive, and then be prepared to engage in discussion to represent our interests. There's also Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP. This is another huge development. So 10% of the larger Surface Transportation Block Grant Program is going to go, will be assigned to this TAP program. And essentially the state has to distribute about 59% of it by formula. The state could distribute 100% of it. And again, MPOs are now eligible for this funding, small MPOs. We weren't before. So this is a big development. And same comment here, basically big opportunity, do the math, prepare to engage and advocate. And I can't see everybody, so Mr. Chairman, if you or somebody wants to jump in, if you would, please just do so. My intention here is to run through these things, hit the highlights, and then have discussion at the end. But please jump in anytime if you like.
Yeah, if any board members have questions, just speak out as we go through. I can see some of the faces, and if someone put their hand up, I would see that, but there's other ones I'm not seeing. So we're a small group, so we can be informal and just jump in. Everybody should be respectful. I'm sure you would be. Thank you.
Thank you. So here we have a new formula program for carbon reduction. Its purpose, not surprisingly, reduce carbon emissions, bike, bus, walking, 6.4 billion over 5 years. And again, it's a formula distribution. So funding should be sub-allocated to MetroPlan. Same message here. We need to just really engage on how those numbers are crunched. There's another formula program called Protect for resilience improvements, storm, flood, etc. 7.3 billion over 5 years goes to the states. And then there's an additional, this one's a bit of a hybrid, 1.4 billion that's competitive. MPOs like MetroPlan can compete for the funds. But 65% of the funds are to be sub-allocated to areas like us, like MetroPlan. So my comments here are, we're entitled to formula, and then we can compete for planning funds. And this might be an opportunity to go back for the downtown mile planning funds. As a quick reminder, we did with the city applied, MetroPlan was engaged in funds for the downtown mile projects. We didn't get that funding, but maybe we can pursue this pot of money or just apply some of the formula funding to it. And then there could be opportunity for the Rio as well. And I know that's a huge priority for the city of Flagstaff and the community at large. So I'm going to move on to discretionary programs. I want to acknowledge I'm not covering everything in this bill. I'm really trying to, I've already done some filtering and hitting the highlights, but there's a lot here. So with the new discretionary program, National Infrastructure Project Assistance Grants, and it supports all major construction for transportation. There's 5 billion for projects that are 100 million to 500 million. Big projects. And then the other half, 5 billion for projects over 500 million. So I put here, it's a potential huge opportunity for the Lone Tree Corridor or the Milton Corridor or the I-40 corridor. This would be a big lift, and it's really one of those questions that I think is, fascinating for MetroPlan. It's fascinating for this community. Do we want to, at some point, just really put everything into a huge project and make our case and pursue it because we think we're viable and it'll take a huge amount of energy to compete at this level? Or do we want to go for some things that seem like they're more likely for us? Big question for us all to discuss together with our member agencies. Another discretionary program is strengthening mobility and I can't see the rest of the slide, revolutionizing transportation program. So technology improvements, and 500 million over 5 years. MPOs are eligible. And actually, this is an opportunity to build on the Smart Signals grant that Dave Wessel submitted earlier this year. And we hope to have an answer on that pretty soon. But more money going to that pot. And we're already somewhat in the pipeline, moving along. So it's a good development for us. Another discretionary program is Rural Surface Transportation Program. Sounds very promising. Improve and expand surface transportation in rural areas. A couple $2 billion. Rural is defined as an area outside an urbanized area that has a population over 200,000. That's pretty vague to me. I mean, is Flagstaff outside of Phoenix, for example? Yes. But how they're going to prioritize these things is going to come out later in rulemaking. And then, so we need some more research here, but it is a good opportunity. And then there's a bridge investment program. It's a big pot of money, 150 million over 5 years. Actually, I'm sorry, I went too fast. It's a large part of money, but I didn't even put the numbers here because our region is not eligible. The population, must be. So that's one we can't pursue. However, there is a prioritization for project scoring. And this is the one that's 150 million over 5 years. And some of you will recall that Dave and I have brought forth a project prioritization matrix that we use to identify what our priorities are going to be. And it's really an art as much as a science. We spent a couple of board meetings on coming to agreement on it. But it might be that we can refine it and put together a model and get some funding to do so that could be helpful for other NPOs. So just something to consider as things unfold. Reconnecting Communities pilot program. So the purpose of this one is to remove the legacy highways that impact communities. And $500 million, a lot of the 150 million of that for planning and some for construction. MetroPlan is eligible. And the only one, what comes to me is I-17 spilling into Milton. And as you're going to hear soon, when the Milton Corridor Master Plan comes forward, one of the big issues with it is that I-17 spills into Milton. And ADOT has to manage Milton as an interstate highway. Might there be funding here to do something different? Another new discretionary program, Save Streets and Roads for All. So this supports this idea of, Vision Zero fatalities on our roadways, $1 billion over 5 years. And then there's this requirement of a comprehensive safety action plan. And a lot of the funds are to develop the action plan, 40%. MPOs are eligible. And to me, this one looks promising. As might be a priority for MetroPlan to pursue and complete a comprehensive safety action plan for the region, because then that would allow our member agencies to be eligible to apply for funds. Then there's a new discretionary program, electric vehicle charging stations, $2.5 billion over 5 years. MetroPlan is again eligible. 50% is reserved for community grants. I frankly don't know what that definition is yet. But certainly partnership with building on the carbon neutrality plan and all of those efforts seem really promising, and that perhaps the MetroPlan region could be very competitive for these funds. Another discretionary program, eliminate railroad crossings to increase safety. I don't know how much this is over 5 years. And MetroPlan is eligible. And it's $1 million minimum grant size. it might be an opportunity for the downtown mile planning grant. However, the risk here, I don't know that there's interest in eliminating any railroad crossings. There's certainly interest in increasing safety. So if we could pursue it from the perspective of increasing safety, we could perhaps do some planning grants. I know there's a lot here, so I hope.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I just hover on the railroad crossing thing for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my understanding is that we're very interested in reducing railroad crossings in Flagstaff. It's definitely a major safety issue. And it's a big feather in our cap, if you will, in our dealings with BNSF in terms of how we leverage our negotiations with them for all the things we're trying to get done downtown. Seems like it would be a very welcome pot of money that we could tap into in terms of our pedestrian undercrossings and our realignments. And there's multiple things we're trying to do under the railroad, and they're not going to be cheap. So I just wanted to linger here for a second. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I don't think we're probably going to be closing the at-grade crossings at Beaver or San Francisco. But I do agree that there has been some serious talk about some underpasses for bicycles and pedestrians. And, and then I wonder if we could use some of this funding to get noise-free zones at some of the East Flagstaff railroad crossings. In other words, have the train not blow their horn and just have a crossing similar to what we already have at Beaver and San Francisco. Other thoughts from commissioners? Or from you, Jeff?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please go ahead, Regina.
I think it will be worthwhile to explore this opportunity to apply for a grant when it comes to the downtown mile project, and potentially eliminating a railroad crossing, or at least increasing safety. So I think we have to look into our downtown mile effort. So gather our city and Metro Plan team to look into that grant opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe that is a distinction worth noting. I don't think we're going to eliminate any car travel over the railroad tracks, but we have many, many opportunities to funnel pedestrians and foot traffic and bicycle traffic under the railroad as opposed to over the top of it at grade.
Or conceivably, it could be a footbridge too. In other words, it could go over or under. But the main point is it wouldn't be at grade.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Totally agree. If I misrepresented this, I just want to be clear that I do agree there can be opportunity. As it happens, the city team is meeting right now about funding sources, and I sent them an email just about a half an hour ago identifying this funding source as a possibility for the downtown mile. And we'll continue to stay engaged. I know the city staff is really on it in terms of looking for funding for the downtown mile projects, and Metro Plan will continue to partner with them and support those efforts. And yes, this could be a very viable pot of money for us.
So we've kind of stopped here for a second, and I'm going to ask a question now that I was going to ask at the end. And we could talk, you can answer this at the end, Jeff, but at some point, as Metro Plan staff and this board going to go over a list of possible projects of, okay, we should apply for this one, not apply for that one, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's something to keep in mind that maybe we can talk about after you finish your presentation.
Yes, thank you. So I just have a few more here, actually. The congestion relief program is really all transportation efforts and projects. It's 250 million over 5 years. MPOs over 1 million qualify. And so we don't. However, the legislation says that states could obligate funds to urbanized areas under 1 million. And this really gets to the last point the council or Chair McCarthy made. To me, it seems like a long shot. There's already funding that is probably a better fit, that's more direct, that we can go and apply directly or advocate for formula funding coming to us. This is the type of a program that we would need to go in and say, would you, state, be willing to exercise your discretion to send money outside of where it's absolutely required? And, you know, my gut feel on that is probably not the best use of our energy, but certainly something we need to determine together how to be most effective in getting funds. Here's another one I put up as an example of what probably isn't a priority for us. Healthy Streets Program, cool pavement, porous pavement, expand tree cover, lots of money, but probably Phoenix is going to be much more competitive than Flagstaff for this funding. And then another discretionary program, this is a big one, active transportation investment. So $1 billion over 5 years, 3 million a year for planning. Metro Plan is eligible, and projects that are regional in nature and more than 15 million are, you know, are eligible. So I look at this and think it's a very promising opportunity to leverage Proposition 419 funds, and think we need to just look at it very carefully. Then a few other items of note. Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, announced a one-stop shop yesterday. And, you know, that's just so you can go to get information and on this bill as things develop and rulemaking happens. That's an example of just how much is there and how quickly it's still developing. And I know Ed Stillings is on the line and don't want to put him on the spot, but if he has something to share, wanted to recognize that he's here. And then also I want to let you know about the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC, advancing the statewide funding initiative. At the beginning of this presentation, I recognized Council Member Salas and Supervisor Vasquez for attending that legislative agenda and being involved in pursuing this as a member of RTAC. And 50 million statewide, 2.6 million would come to Flagstaff for the Lone Tree Corridor. And I can't see for sure if Kevin Adam is here, but Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to give him a chance to give us an update on that.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Jeff. And I think we've developed a lot of very good momentum for the legislation. We do have a bill sponsor. It's Representative Tim Dunn from Yuma. Tim co-chairs the Rural Legislator Caucus, and so he has a very good relationship with rural legislators from across the state. We've also got the support and commitment of the Transportation Committee Chairman, Frank Carroll. And Chairman Carroll has indicated not only support for this, but he's essentially guaranteed me that he's going to make sure this bill gets out of his committee successfully. So at the Rural Transportation Summit last month, we had, I believe it was 16 legislators that participated. And I think that universally, we heard support for the legislation from that group. We've met with another roughly 16 in one-on-one meetings, and we've received sort of that same level of support. And so basically, I think the support level for the legislation is there. Right now, the state revenue outlook is very, very positive. They finished the last fiscal year with a 690 million carry forward balance. And 3 months into the new state fiscal year, they were already 640 million above where they had anticipated. And so I guess for lack of a better term, the surplus looks like it's going to be there, which provides the opportunity for these projects to be included in the budget. So for now, we'll work the bill through the first couple of months of session. And then when they get ready to draft budget bills, I think we'll be in a real good place as far as seeing these projects included in the state budget.
Thanks, Kevin. Jeff, back to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Kevin. Okay, so some considerations, and I'm kind of, wrapping up here and putting some things out for next steps for us. One, with formula funding, this legislation represents a change for the state because more funds are going to be directed by formula than ever before, and there's less discretion to the state in some areas. So we need to partner with the state and our peers to engage in that distribution. Clearly, that's one of the things I love about our membership with RTAC and the work that Kevin does and the involvement of Councilmember Salas and Supervisor Vasquez. The more that we can be on the same page with our peers and be advocating and asking for and supporting things together, I think that just makes us stronger in terms of having a voice that's distinct to Maricopa and Pima County. So lots to be done there, lots to develop, a lot to be enthusiastic about. And then for competitive, there are a lot of new opportunities. And I just want to point out the elected official alignment with the state government and the federal government in terms of, the party affiliation of our various elected officials here in Flagstaff. It varies. And I think with all of this federal funding coming in, there really is great opportunity to build on those relationships. And obviously we have to do really good programs, and it's also having really good relationships. And so for next, we've got, it's going to be coming rulemaking, a lot of program writing. Eventually there'll be some distribution of funds. There will be publication of notices of funding opportunities or funding availability. And what I'm hearing is we're likely going to get instruction to implement quickly. But it can't be well, let's just wait. Because there are some things we can do now. And it goes back to Councilmember McCarthy's question, identify what the best fits are, inform our teams. And then when we get clear on those things, we make some choices about what we think our priorities are, inform our congressional delegation what we intend to apply for. And the sooner we can get our messaging down and be solid about it, the better. And then there's this point about there's going to be intense competition for funds, but also for grant writers. So we're just probably going to be needing to do a whole lot of this stuff in-house. We can consider trying to hire another grant writer. It's not something I've put in my budget yet, but there's going to be a lot of grants to write. And some closing thoughts. There's a lot to be optimistic about, and I think it's also important to take inventory on where we are at. So I think it's fair to say we collectively, city, county, Metro Plan staff, have put thousands of hours of effort into surface transportation grants over the past 3 years. And the results, and I'm excluding airports and transit from this, because the Metro Plan is really not that involved in airports, and transit is something that Mountain Line has been leading for a long time. But our results have been 5.5 million for bicycle and pedestrian funding, which is fantastic. You know, that's a huge influx of funding. But in terms of 4th Street and our RAISE grant, we just haven't received funding. Been competing, but not winning. Now we're pending for smart signals that hope to hear soon, and then we're pending for community initiatives funding, some earmarks that were written. But my point here, though, is I think, you know, we really need a surface transportation win. We need to get into a new pot of funding and then deliver on those projects and build momentum so that we can keep bringing in and be seen as a community that delivers and does what we say we're going to do. There's no question that Mountain Line's momentum as they continue to bring in more funding is because they say they want to do something, they get the money, they do it, they say we did it, and they ask for more money. And that's the kind of momentum we want to establish here with all of our transportation projects. So I put focus, clarity, consistency, and teamwork. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Miles. Do any of the board members have questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. It really does present great opportunities for us right now. And I think the challenge is really deciding where we want to go and how we're going to pursue some of these grants, but great opportunities for us. You don't usually get this. So good news. Thank you for the overview, Miles.
Thank you, Patrice. Yeah, so Jeff, I guess this will be coming back to us over the next few months as we work through it. Is that kind of a summary of the go forward?
Absolutely, yes. It'll be unfolding and developing. It'll probably be a standing update on our agenda.
That sounds good. All right, it sounds,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Regina, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just took note of a couple of items that would require some planning on MetroPlan's part. For example, the Resilience Improvement Plan, which is under the Protect, and then the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, which is under the Vision Zero.
Yes.
I think those two plans will serve as well as MetroPlan, as of course to be able to apply for those types of grants. And if I could ask Mr. Miles to if you could please after the meeting share this PowerPoint presentation to the board, because it's a lot of notes here. I tried to catch up with writing notes, I could not, but I did read the packet that has the verbiage. But I do appreciate your PowerPoint presentation because I use it as my cheat sheet when I'm out and about talking with the community and wanting to know about what MetroPlan is all about. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Dave Wessel, did you have a comment? I see.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board. To the last point raised by Member Salas, I just wanted to bring to your attention that we are working with NACOG and the Central Yavapai MPO on the Regional Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. We have funding coming from the state. We're asking for additional funding. And to your point, Member Salas, as we learn more about this Vision Zero, we may want to perhaps augment that funding to make sure that we're as well positioned through that planning effort to capture those funds. And then I just want to bring up one, I've got the gray beard here, so I'll bring up a little history that I think is relevant to the the discussion today. So the Transportation Alternatives Program was introduced a couple of bills ago, and it really brought the end to the enhancement program, which had been a very successful statewide program. Arizona was a model. Flagstaff enjoyed many grants over the years for building trails and beautification projects. And with this new legislation, there may be an opportunity for something like that to come back. Miles in his presentation noticed that there are some new restrictions on the state. And in this particular program, the state had been able to just flex all of that money into where they thought they needed it. And now they have to show that there's been a competition, and only after those funds have been expended through that competition can they flex those monies. And those monies, again, are for ped and bike projects. So this is an opportunity to maybe restore a project or a program where we've been very successful, an opportunity, as Miles pointed out, to really work with the state on establishing that competitive program. So it's exciting times. There's great opportunity ahead of us. So thank you.
Any other comments on this agenda item? All right, just as a quick check, we're almost halfway through our time allotment. So Dave, keep your mic on, and you're going to talk to us about regional transportation plan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief in my opening comments. The Regional Transportation Plan is our required update to the central document for MPOs, and that is this Regional Transportation Plan. We've hired Burgess and Nyepel to help us produce that plan. And we have with us today Dana Biskin for Burgess and Nyepel to give us an update. So I will just turn it over to Dana. She has a presentation to bring you guys up to speed. Dana?
Thanks, Dave. And I'm going to share my screen, so give me just 1 second. And let me know when you can see it.
We can see it.
You can see it now.
All right. Great.
Looks good.
Okay. So in general, just as a refresher, I believe you've all seen the schedule in the past. We are on budget and on schedule. We've completed the literature review. We are currently working to address comments on the socioeconomic paper and trends review. We are updating the model, and we've been doing quite a bit of public involvement activities, which I'll provide a bit more detail about later in the presentation. So we're actively coordinating with the regional plan development. This includes the regional snapshots that are informing the regional plan. We're providing content as well as receiving content from the regional plan effort. And then we're coordinating in general our deliverables with theirs so that the two plans are aligned. So this is a list of all of the regional snapshots that are underway or completed thus far. The ones denoted in bold are ones that the Metro Plan team has participated in or provided information to. And I believe, Dave, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Dana. There's a lot of work being done by the regional plan team. We're, as Dana mentioned, heavily coordinated with them. And we're going to look at all of this output and consider it for the regional transportation plan to make sure that the plan is responding to known trends and emerging factors. So for instance, for the economy, we want to see what's missing in terms of support of our existing economy, look at plans and policies for future economic development, and make sure we're planning the transportation systems that are going to help those. Housing is a big part of the IIJA in terms of coordination with housing. And, we want to make sure that we're, projecting and anticipating the types of housing and their location that's going to meet housing needs, as well as support goals like climate change. And with housing, with transportation being the second largest part of a household budget right after housing, it's really critical to see what we can do to perhaps lower that transportation budget through effective land use planning and anticipation of housing types. So these are all very important documents. They're going to be posted to, they're being posted to the city's regional plan site, as well as to the to a YouTube channel. So there's a little 15-minute video that goes with each of these, and there will be papers to follow. So thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Dave. So as I mentioned, we have completed a draft of the socioeconomic analysis. So I'll share with you the data sets that we reviewed, as well as our preliminary findings. So we leveraged the 2015 to 19 ACS surveys. This is basically provides information and input for, well, the types of information that you see on your screen in between census updates in particular. So our goal with doing the socioeconomic review is to identify areas where there is an overrepresentation of these characteristics, the Title VI characteristics, and things that might inhibit accessibility. So and also looking at the trends for these items. So for example, if there is an increase in an older population, understanding that their transportation needs may be different than an increase in a younger population. We'll also be leveraging this information to perform an accessibility analysis to assess how well the overrepresented areas can connect to essential services as opposed to kind of the general community. So this map kind of provides some context on where the different accessibility risks are concentrated. In general, for example, the Northwest quadrant is very, very low population. So again, the needs of that region would be different, even though maybe it is, lack of vehicle access. So I'm going to share an inset. So basically, we'll leverage this information and look for those pockets of the typically underrepresented populations to evaluate the accessibility of the transportation network, both with the 419 and 20 projects implemented, and then as we develop the second sustainable scenario, looking for ways to maybe provide enhanced connectivity for those communities.
Dana, could you kind of explain what the different colors and crosshatches mean?
Yes.
Maybe not in every one, but just kind of an overview.
Sure. So, for example, we're looking for the traditionally underserved populations. So the black speckled one, for example, represents where there is a higher concentration of households under the poverty line. The blue hatch indicates areas where there is a higher proportion of a disabled population. The orange is the older population, and the yellow represents a comparison to vehicle access, and the green is the minority population. So basically where there's convergence, I recognize there's a lot of information on this map and a lot of different hatching. What we're trying to do is overlay these different data sets and identify where there's multiple factors at play, because potentially those communities or those areas would have the greatest accessibility risks. So we want to make sure that they're well served by the transportation system.
I see that there's a key on the right side. I didn't
Yes.
notice it before because I have another screen that's partially covering it.
Yes. Any other questions?
Hello, I have a question. In the area, there's a green cross hatching. I don't see that in the legend. What does that represent? Down in the Lakeside Eric Acres area and then up in Donny Park.
That is blue.
That is-
So it's the disability rate.
Ah, okay, because it appears to be green cross hatching on the screen, so it was a little confusing.
I apologize. I know it's a lot of different colors and patterns to try to differentiate overlaying these different data sets.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay. So some trends that we observe from looking at these data sets is that oftentimes the disabled population and the population over 65 overlap spatially. And then in general, when you look at the data sets for the region as a whole, there is a higher proportion of older people that have a disability. So it makes sense that those areas are overlapping. Then the Grandview homes and Sunnyside neighborhoods have in higher incidence of the minority population. I apologize, my computer, I had the same problem, my computer's blocking something. The limited English proficiency, median household income, and fewer to no household vehicles. So again, those communities, based on our review thus far, look like they would be desirable ones to review for accessibility. Also notably, but to be expected, the area around NAU has a higher proportion of people with no personal vehicles. And then Donny Park, to kind of tie back to your question, it does have multiple accessibility factors that are largely linked to an older population. Notably that they're older. Sometimes we'll see an increase of poverty where there's an older population because people are retired. So it's not so much that they're actually poor, but that they don't have a active income anymore. But again, in looking at the Donny Park area, they do have adequate automobile ownership, and then just geographically, the distance to the city center, it may be challenging to implement multimodal solutions for that community. And also cognizant of the demographics. Any questions?
And Dana, before you begin, I'll see if there's any questions, but before you begin the next section, I'd like to make a couple comments.
Sure.
So any questions from the board?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just if you just rewind to the previous slide, when you talk about incomes, when you say can you define the not active income? Do you mean fixed income or income on retirement, based on retirement?
Yes, basically, in this study and in others where residents are retired, and when I say active income, that may not be the best terminology, but you know, for example, versus someone with a full-time job.
I believe the fixed income
Fixed
is
income.
really where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's correct.
Mhm.
So I just want to comment that this type of analysis is really going to help us make sure that we have a sound plan in terms of meeting the needs of the community. One of the trends that Dana didn't report on, but we see is there is an increase in our aging population, and we need to dig a little bit deeper into that. You know, is this aging in place? Is this people retiring here? Because all of those things do have implications for transportation and transportation needs. So as we dig deeper and put together our policies, you know, we'll make sure that we're responding to what we see, and not just the socioeconomic trends, but all of those other, I think it's 30 plus papers that the regional plan is working on. So thank you, Dan.
Mhm. So an update on the public involvement program. We are working through 3 major items currently. We're conducting a statistically valid survey. We've begun stakeholder outreach, branding, and then we've got some next steps to implement those items. So the statistically valid survey is being conducted by a global local, and there's a breadth of questions to address the transportation needs and preferences and also inform development of the scenario 2 or the sustainable scenario. The interviews were split between the Flagstaff area as well as the broader county. So then that way, and recorded separately. So that'll help us determine if views within the Flagstaff area and the county align. That may also help shape implementation or recommendations. So the surveys were conducted via phone. It was an 18-minute phone interview. 412 surveys were completed in the Flagstaff area, 262 outside the Flagstaff area. So we're working, or our sub-consultant is working through the data processing and will provide the results to the team in December. And then we will be launching a broader public survey that generally parallels the questions from this survey, obviously abbreviated, in January. The RTP team has been working through stakeholder outreach. We've had multiple communications sent out to over 230 potential contacts or stakeholders. We've identified over 50 champions, currently 58 champions that may help with outreach to targeted groups. And we've identified through these champions a list of community events. So we'll be determining which ones to participate in and the frequency to participate in them. We're also working on developing messaging, and then we're going to be conducting the stakeholder interviews in the December-January timeframe. So as part of the RTP effort, we've conducted a branding exercise on November 15th to help promote a brand for MetroPlan and have consistent messaging themes and a look and feel for communications associated with this plan. So we've identified the goals, what we've heard, and then some initial themes stemming from that beginning exercise. So some of the goals for branding are to identify something like an emotional hook to get the public to consider the results or what the goal, what the end state of the plan could be, and answer the question of why does the plan matter? This informs development of the core message, the social media content, the naming of the RTP, the naming of the scenarios, all of the subsequent materials to kind of build towards the brand. So the objective of the branding is that at the conclusion of the RTP, residents will feel hopeful and excited about the future, considering the broad swath of things, the climate, equity, ease of transportation, have new and valuable information. I apologize, my screen is a problem today. Developing a new familiarity with MetroPlan and be excited basically about the transportation network and the potential improvements. So within the branding exercise, multiple themes were explored. The one that seemed to resonate the most was a problem-solving theme. So when everyone is involved, we'll solve our biggest problems together. And this again ties back to multiple community concerns, looking at all the literature reviews associated with the regional plan, the climate change initiative, and transportation. So a holistic approach through the transportation network. Deliverables associated with the branding will be naming the RTP and have a narrative outline later this month. Have branding, basically all the materials will be branded to look and feel the same. We'll have social media pages and content to garner interest and support from the public, and also have outreach strategies. And I believe, Dave, you were gonna add on to this?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Thank you, Dana. And then
Sure.
I know Miles participated in that branding effort, and want to kick it over to him for a bit. But Just want to make a point on the survey. You saw that there was 262 in the county. We had presented to you earlier that we were looking to get 400, and that was proving to be very difficult for a number of reasons, just the size of the population probably being the biggest one. Talking with our sub-consultant, we're comfortable that 262 is going to give us a really solid look at what's going on in the county, and we're stopping there. I'll say we're very encouraged. We sent out, as Dana mentioned, over 230 invitations to people to join us, become champions, to get almost a quarter of those to sign on and say, yeah, we're willing to help get the word out. It was very encouraging, and really looking forward to getting the event scheduled where we can get the word out on the plan. So I'll stop there for now and see what Miles perhaps would like to add.
Thank you. And just very briefly, I'm excited about the branding program. I know there are board members who have experience with advertising and marketing and outreach. And just a candid assessment, we are a new organization and we are establishing ourselves in the community and with our member agencies. So our ability to be very clear on who we are and what we're doing and what our results are, and then being able to deliver is just really important. This is a great opportunity for us. I also want to recognize Councilmember Aslan. When we did the branding exercise, Dave Wessel remembered and pointed out that Councilmember Aslan is also an author. So we went pretty deep on the exploration of who we are and what we do. And I appreciate the time that you took, Councilmember Aslan, and just wanted to see if there's anything you wanted to say about the process.
No, I don't think I have any worthy insights to add at this point. I do appreciate you inviting me to be a part of the discussion. It's always fascinating to be a fly on the wall for that sort of thing. Very much do appreciate branding efforts. And I think what we really nailed down, at least so far, is that we need to put our public into the driver's seat of a story. So there's a narrative out there, and we want the public to feel like the protagonist, making things happen here in the city and in the surrounding community. And so I look forward to learning more specifically what that's going to look like. But our conversations ranged from Sam and Frodo on Mount Doom, all the way to I don't know, I can't remember some of the other examples, but I was very impressed when Miles pulled out his 20-sided Dungeons and Dragons dice that he just happens to have within arm's reach while he's sitting in front of a video feed. I found that very impressive. It was a fun conversation, and I look forward to the results.
That's great.
All right, Dana, I think that's, is there any other thoughts or comments from the board at this point? All right, Dana, I think you can continue with the presentation.
Okay. So for next steps, we have a website soft launch in December. As I previously mentioned, we'll be doing the stakeholder interviews in December and January, a public survey in January, completing the base model by the end of the year, and then leveraging that information to begin the scenario 1 development and assessment, as well as conducting an accessibility analysis to inform scenarios 1 and 2. So that concludes our update. Are there any questions?
Hearing none, I'm gonna just make a couple of closing comments. Dana, thank you very much for the presentation. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I think we're in really solid shape as we move forward. We're building a really solid foundation, both for the technical work that we're doing through those regional snapshots, as they're called, as well as the development of the model. The model is going to provide lots of solid insights. I'll remind you, it's a very good model, but it is just a model. And so fleshing this out with the community conversations and input from yourselves is going to be very important. And then building that foundation for that public engagement as well through the stakeholder outreach and developing those champions and the branding effort. So come December, we're going to be having kind of a soft launch of a website, which is basically a page within the MetroPlan website. And then January, as the branding really gets set in place, we'll really start with that social media push that will drive people to the website. And that survey, that next survey that Dana mentioned, will be an online survey, and then we'll push that through this new RTP website page. So really things really are going to start moving and shaking, if you will, come January, as we start building on this foundation and really engaging the public in meaningful ways. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Are there any other comments from the board? Well, thank you guys so much. Appreciate the work,
Yeah.
and we'll certainly be hearing from you again.
Yep,
Right,
thank
the
you.
next item is the Milton corridor update. Miles, I think you were going to take this one.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is really just an update, an item for discussion. It is in our strategic work plan to take a position on, review and either support the Milton Corridor Master Plan or recommend adjustments to it. And it's been in the works for about 4 years now. It's nearing completion. And I'm anticipating, and I just sent an email out to ADOT earlier today to see if they might be in a position to present to us in January. We have been involved in the process for years. Dave has been involved in it since before I signed on with the organization 3 years ago. And one of the key issues at the end is that member agencies, MetroPlan, the city, Mountain Line, NAU, really interested in more pedestrian crossings and some more considerations for bike and ped in the corridor. And ADOT has been looking at that. It escalated, and I say that in a good way. It's part of the process of keeping the dialogue going, where the highest level managers in the organizations got involved and looked at this to try to see if we could find resolution. So that meeting was just last week, that escalation meeting. And Audra Merrick did a great job facilitating it. And I believe they're going to, take those comments and ultimately put together their corridor master plan and then present it to the community. And when they do, we'll have opportunity to discuss and comment on it. So I'm expecting that just after the first of the year. And I think actually that concludes my report. I want to see if I could, Mr. Chair, if Dave has anything he wants to add to that report.
Not at this time. Thank you.
Well, I'll make a couple comments. I did talk to city staff about this issue just yesterday, and they were not too optimistic about pedestrian crossings being added. But I think everyone agrees that we need to let ADOT come up with their plan, and at that point, study it and make comments on it. It's probably premature to make comments on it now because it's kind of nebulous. I mean, the meetings we've had have been good, obviously. I think this will probably go before city council and have a city council discussion on it because, I mean, there's issues like we're hearing that ADOT may want to add islands all up and down Milton. A lot of the businesses are not happy about that. And what they're really not happy about is some new businesses are being asked to pay for improvements on, islands and preventing left turns that they don't want. So on one hand, they don't want it. On the other hand, they're being asked to pay for it. So there's still some issues, but I think the consensus is that we'll wait and see what the final plan is before we make comments on it. Jeff or Dave, you can respond to that, or any other board members, please speak up. I'm not hearing any, so I guess that kind of summarizes it. Thanks, Dave and Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so briefly, the next item I think should be a very short item, the meeting venue. This is it. Miles, you want to kind of kick us off on that, and then I'll have some comments on this one also.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this came up at the last meeting when the board did adopt our calendar for the coming year, and then a discussion about what our meeting venue should be. I'm recommending, and I got to say, this is a soft recommendation. And looking at it, it's what makes the most sense to me. I'm absolutely, and of course, open to doing whatever works for the board. But I'm recommending that the board continue holding hybrid meetings like the one we're holding today, using Zoom in this MetroPlan conference room through the rest of this fiscal year at least. And, at the last meeting, we discussed it, and clearly, if we move to the city council chambers, that's a bigger, place where we can have social distancing. The conference room, as you can see from one of the windows that we're in at MetroPlan, is very small. And we couldn't have all the board members here and maintain social distancing. Even without COVID, it would feel very tight. It could be done. So if the board wants a place where we can all get together, then we would need to have a meeting off-site. So I went ahead through and put in some advantages and disadvantages here. I think I got a little bit, maybe too much in the weeds for the purposes of the staff report, and maybe don't have to revisit all of it. If I jump to the alternatives and put them up on the screen, a soft recommendation is we keep doing what we've been doing. It's pretty flexible. There's no additional expense. It postpones a change until the future is more clear, because you just don't know what might come in the next 3 or 6 months. This new venue is an option where, all members could be present and have physical presence and still maintain social distancing. Maybe City Hall, who's been very gracious and would welcome us back. Maybe another member agency, another facility in town. There might be some time, certainly some expense to do it, but it would give us what we want in terms of social distancing. We could do 100% virtual. We did that for a while. That's an option. And then we could do 100% physical, and just declare everyone will be there. But at this point, I just come back to the hybrid, and let's just let things play out a bit. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll add some more information. After this draft agenda came out, I had some discussions with the Flagstaff City Manager and with the Flagstaff City Clerk about the practicality of us meeting in the City Council chambers. The bottom line is, if we want to do that, and I don't have a strong recommendation one way or the other, if we want to do that, we can make it happen. We can have hybrid meetings there where people would be in person, but similar to what the City Council is doing, if a member wants to, come in electronically from home or wherever, a hotel or wherever. Just last night, the city manager was out of state, but he participated via video. So that works, and it can work for us too. Because of the COVID restrictions, generally the city is not having like commissions and committees meeting in person. So we could if we wanted to, but it would probably be board members and staff only, and the public would probably have to participate electronically. The city has the infrastructure to do that. And if we decide to do that, one of the Metro Plan staff people would have to learn how to use that equipment, and city staff would teach them how to do it. There would be no expense, there'd be no charge. The city would donate will allow us to use the facility at no charge. But there would be a little bit more staff work for Metro Plan because we would have to learn how to use some new equipment. So in summary, it can work if we want to start meeting face to face, or we can continue to do the hybrid. Or if somebody else has other ideas where we could meet. You know, as far as 100% virtual or 100% physical, to me, those don't make sense. I think really the two options are the hybrid as we're doing it today, or the hybrid in City Hall where more of us could come together and see each other, and there's adequate room for social distancing there. Why don't I open it up to questions to the board members? And also I want to hear what your thoughts are. Are you happy doing it the way we're doing it? Or no, I'd like to go down to City Hall or somewhere else, and so we can look at each other across the table. So who would like to comment first? And Jeff and Dave, if you have a comment, you know, feel free also. Gina, do you have a thought? I see your face here. I don't hear anything from Gina or anyone.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and fill the silence. You know, I agree with your analysis on it, Jim, and appreciate the hybrid. More than likely, I will appear from a hybrid, at least for the foreseeable future. So in terms of City Hall, I know you were taking a look at that for those that may want to attend in person. And I'd like to leave that, you know, I think that's a great opportunity. I got the feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, but I got the feeling from Miles that that may be more of an inconvenience to do it there at City Hall than it would be to continue to have it there at the Metro Plan conference room. So, you know, I don't have really strong feelings one way or the other with regards to that, but I do feel strongly we need to continue this as a hybrid.
Okay, so your recommendation is keep doing it the way we're doing it today.
Yes, I love that.
Okay,
I also agree. I appreciate the ability to have hybrid. I miss the meetings in person, but think based on just the way things are going still with COVID and kind of our new reality, I think hybrid's probably our best way to go moving forward.
all right, so you also prefer the format we're doing today?
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, I am a hard yes to Miles's soft recommendation as well.
So you're a hybrid,
I am.
okay? And Regina, or,
Hybrid it is.
okay, I think we have a consensus. So I will call the city manager and just kind of let him know where our head is on this. And incidentally, we can reconsider this a year from now. This isn't like casting concrete to the end of time. All right, good, thank you. That was pretty quick, and we came to a consensus. The next item is G, which is strategic advanced planning. I think the only real issue here is confirming the date of April 6th. Miles, I'll hand it over to you, though.
Yeah.
You have other comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I almost could have left this off the agenda, put it in the consent. We adopted the calendar last month. I just wanted to be crystal clear, and that April 6th is the date we're looking at for the strategic advance. So I just brought it back and I provided a draft agenda. If you would perhaps humor me, and if you all agree, take a motion so we can just document it for the record. That would be great.
Well, I'll make a motion that we do the strategic advance on April 6th, and that will be a virtual meeting. Can I get a second? Please.
I will be happy to second that.
Thank you, Ms. Horstman. Any other discussion? Oh, we had that last month. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you have it, Miles. You have a formal motion approved unanimously that we will meet April 6th. Details to follow.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Malbec, I think you were going to talk about the mini grant award. Well, I'll leave it at that.
I am. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Metro Plan fiscal year 2022 mini grant award. I'm recommending that it be awarded, be directed to an intergovernmental agreement or a contract with the City of Flagstaff Sustainability Program for an amount not to exceed $100,000. And you might be scratching your head and going, what is this all about? So I'm going to tell you. A couple things we've got in our strategic work plan to continue the grant program. And then also to develop a regional approach to maintaining vehicle miles traveled at 2019 levels. And we went through our process of sending out a notice of funding opportunity to our member agencies. You know, the board reviewed this and the TACMA Management Committee before we released it. We sent it out and we received back one proposal, and only one. And the proposal was from the sustainability program, and they want to do, and I attached their proposal to this packet. They want to do a workshop related to best practices and emerging trends. They want to incorporate some tools for infrastructure planning, such as a calculator on transportation impacts. And essentially, they want to enhance the sophistication, I would say, of the tools available and being used in our community to measure the impacts of transportation projects on climate change and expand the thinking a bit so that there's some more innovative tools or other opportunities are considered. So in getting this application, let me get back to the staff report. In getting this application and sitting with it for a bit and considering it, I recognize that, you know, what their sustainability is wanting to do is really very closely aligned with what Metro Plan is doing with the regional transportation plan. In some ways, it's direct overlap. And rather than award a grant that says, okay, sustainability program, go do your thing, and they're a little bit off to the side and report back to us. And thinking about this, it seemed like the opportunity here was really to engage with sustainability program a little more directly and say, yeah, I mean, and I think you all know, they have so much talent, so much passion, so much expertise in this area. They've got a lot of momentum. And that if we, Metro Plan, can kind of bring all that energy into enhancing our overall regional transportation plan effort, it'll be better for us. We'll have some synergy there. And I think it'll be better for sustainability because what they're doing will be more integrated with what we're doing. They get a little less autonomy, but I think we get a product ultimately that's going to be more effective for the community. So I'm suggesting we do a contract or intergovernmental agreement for all of those reasons. And I discussed this at some length with the technical advisory committee, who went around after thinking about it carefully, and it was unanimous to take this approach. Discussed it with the management committee. And again, they were also unanimous in taking this approach. And I know it's a little bit maybe unorthodox to say we're doing a grant, but really now we want to do it as a contract. But I've also spoken with sustainability program and they're interested in this as well. So I think this is really a matter of, you know, what are we trying to get done? How do we do it? And let's use the tools and the opportunities available to us And I think that's what I'm recommending with this approach. If the board also supports it, then our next effort would be to figure out what is that mechanism? Is it an IGA? Is it a contract? And if we get the green light from the board, we'll just go figure that out as staff. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Miles. I might mention that yesterday I talked to Nicole Ananopoulos, who heads up sustainability at the city, and told her the approach that you're proposing, and she feels very comfortable with that approach. I think it's a good idea that your approach you're recommending to make sure that everything's rooted in the real world. Sustainability's priorities are slightly different than the FMPO, but I think there's a lot of overlap. So I think this will be a new tool that the city can use and the county can use for evaluating projects in the future. So she was supportive, I'm supportive, and I see Regina Salas has her hand up. So why don't I give the mic to you, Regina?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about this grant. I just have a question in terms of the funding, the amount, because the proposal was for 79,500 and the contract is up to 100,000. So I just want an explanation about the 20,500
Yes.
parity.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Salas, thank you for that question. And yeah, I put it in there just for flexibility's sake. As we go through and we're looking to contract with sustainability program, and Dana may still be on the phone, we might see other things that have been revealed over the past 6 or 7 or 8 months of our planning process, and be able to just take advantage of even more synergy and get the work done we need. So I'm just asking for that additional amount not to exceed to give us some management flexibility.
Yeah, I also want to kind of just be mindful of potential overlap and overreach, because we are also going through the RTP process. So if there's a potential for synergy, the synergistic effort between this grant project as it relates to the development of our regional transportation plan. So, I mean, in my mind, this grant, as it moves forward into implementation, should support the regional transportation planning process, not the other way around.
So I see David Wessel, your hand is up. So maybe you can answer Regina's and make other comments that you feel appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yes, Member Salas, you make an excellent point, and I think the contract format will enable us to better align or assure alliance between the RTP and the efforts by the sustainability group. As far as the room under the contract, that extra $20,000, I think there are some tools that could be developed through this process that were maybe alluded to in their proposal, but not explicit. And this is something that we want to negotiate. An example of that would be the transportation impact analysis. You all sitting on the council have heard of these in development proposals where that TIA, transportation impact analysis, is presented. And there's been a lot of work, particularly in California and other places, on advancing that we really don't enjoy here in this community. And so there's an opportunity to really bring transit and pedestrian and bicycle measures in more explicitly into that TIA process through this grant/contract. I think it's all in keeping with what they would like to do. And so that's the kind of negotiations that we want to do, which may entail additional costs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. I just recall back in our October Metro Plan board meeting, one of the consultants for the regional transportation plan presented the VMT calculator. So This is
Right, that's an excellent point.
from
And
California.
right, and where this also gives us a chance to take this new model that we've developed and, see how it can best be employed in perhaps these new processes where we can really pinpoint the vehicle miles traveled impacts. And if that's the direction that ultimately council wants to go, because that TIA process would be adopted by them, we can lay that out and really see that synergy in terms of how it can be used to achieve broader policy objectives of the city and metro plan as well.
Does anybody else have comments or questions?
I'd like to respond to Councilmember McCarthy's comments if I can.
Please.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment about the work we're asking sustainability to do supports the overall effort of the RTP, not vice versa. And that old kind of cliche comes to mind of, the tail wagging the dog. I think, just to be really candid, and I know this is a public meeting and this is a great place to say this, Metro Plan is really an organization that wants to understand what the community needs and meet that need. I think sustainability is more of an advocacy role of, we know what the community needs and we want to make this happen. And finding that blend is something that I need to make sure that, I can't allow Metro Plan to become an advocacy organization in that regard, to tell the community what they need. I need to give the community what they need. So I think we can find that balance. I also want to point out that there are alternatives here that I put out, and we discussed them, and we can discuss them again with the board if you like. This contract is the first one that I recommended. Awarding the funding as a grant, I'm not recommending for the reasons we've discussed. The other opportunity is to say, let's not award the funding at all. Let's just reopen the grant process and recognize we only had one application and we know there's other projects. So let's see if we can get some more competition. And this was discussed by the TAC and the management committee, and both felt like, let's honor the process and find a way to make this work. So that's partly, a lot of thought went into the recommendation I've given you today, and certainly open to taking it in whatever direction this board likes.
Thank you, Miles. Any other comments or questions? All right, to move this along, I think I will make a motion. I move that we approve the FY 2022 mini grant funds to be directed to through an intergovernmental agreement or contract with the City of Flagstaff Sustainability Program for an amount not to exceed $100,000. Can I get a second, and then we can have discussion?
I'll second that.
Patrice Horstman seconds. Do we have any discussion? Pros or cons? Well, I'm not hearing any, so I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And are there any opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're down to items from the staff. And I think what was listed here, and Miles, I think you're going to take this as state freight update or any other things you need to talk about.
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually going to ask Dave to do the state freight update. I've got a few other items that have come up that I'd just like to let the board know about. First is the All Aboard America conference, which is happening in Tucson on Saturday. I know Councilmember McCarthy knows this because he's attending and is engaged with this group already and is the one who told me about it. And I put a call in to the director of that organization, and I'm going to attend virtually on Saturday. And this ties to the Amtrak funding, where we are looking for refurbishment or new rail cars for the Southwest Chief. And hopefully between us, Councilmember McCarthy there in person and me probably there virtually, we can get some contacts and find some handles to move that advocacy forward.
Quick correction, it's called Olive Board Arizona.
Thank you. Olive Garden, Arizona.
So their focus is on rail around Arizona. They're very interested in our routes through Flagstaff, but they're also interested in trying to get a train between Tucson and Phoenix as an example. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. And then I met with Chair McCarthy and Vice Chair Horstman earlier this week to look at the 360 evaluation process that's going to be coming out in the next few months. And that's basically about my performance and leadership for this organization and where we're headed. So you'll get more information on that soon through email and updates in these meetings. I just wanted you to know that's still moving ahead. And with that, Dave, can you give an update on the state freight?
Yes, thank you, Miles. Mr. Chair, members of the board. The state is responsible for a series of statewide plans, and they do a fairly admirable job of being inclusive for those. This is the update to the state freight plan. One of the things in the IIJA is the ability to expand or designated critical freight corridors. Some of that might come into play in this update, and we can have input into that to see if there's anything that might be beneficial to us. That opens up the door for funding, competitive though it may be. The technical group involved in this is fairly broad, includes rail shippers, BNSF, UP, Union Pacific, several truck hauling companies, a lot of major shippers, as well as practitioners like myself. I've recently put Chris Pastors from Coconino County Economic Development in touch with the project manager there for the state freight update because of the work that the county is doing out at Camp Navajo. And I believe they've received a grant and will be releasing an RFP relative to that grant to investigate things like intermodal facilities, rail truck facilities, as well as industrial development out of Camp Navajo. So it's an opportunity here through this state freight plan update to really bring some synergy and keep local freight interests like Camp Navajo kind of front and center and top of mind. So thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I think that concludes report from Metro Plan staff.
All right, I guess the last thing is items from the board. The question for you, Miles, we have a new employee. I don't think she's actually been introduced to us. So.
Oh, well, actually, she and I talked about it this morning. I thought we introduced her last month.
Oh, okay.
And I told her she's part of staff team now. But certainly, since you brought it up, let me, introduce Mandia Gonzalez, who's joined us. She came over from NACOG and has been with us for about a month now. And really grateful to have her on the team. I will tell you as board members that I've already seen some of her work and expertise that she's been able to bring in from the field. So Mandia being here, welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. I look forward to working with you all.
Right. Hope to meet you in person sometime.
That'd be great.
All right. Let's go around the board. If anybody else has any things that they would like to announce. Patrice Horstman? Anything?
No, I don't. Thank you. So I don't have anything to announce.
Well, thanks for being here. Geronimo Vasquez?
No, just appreciate all the hard work and all the presentations, and hope everyone has a happy holidays moving forward.
I'll just call you vice chair for short from now on. Austin Aslan?
I got nothing.
All right, thank you. Regina Salas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the chance to meet Senator Sonny Borelli. So he's the majority whip at the state Senate. I met him at the Marine and Veterans Ball a couple of weeks ago. And of course, I had to mention MetroPlan and RTAC and all of our cool projects with MetroPlan, and of course, asking for his support when that proposed bill will go to Senate about the RTAC 50 million proposed bill, and 2.6 million will go to MetroPlan. I also had the chance to, with the RTAC role, I reconnected with Representative O'Halloran's office because one of his staff attended the Rural Transportation Summit and mentioned that she took notes of our ask for Lone Tree as our MetroPlan project for the 50 million rural transportation proposed bill. And that led to a meeting with Keith Breckus, the district director for Representative O'Halloran's office, and wanted to know more about the project and of course our other future projects for Northern Arizona. So just doing the hard work. Thank you.
You're doing some good networking. Thank you, Regina. All right, our next meeting, and hope to see you or hear you all on January 5th. If there's nothing else that anyone has, last call. If not, I'm going to adjourn. So at 11:53, we are adjourned. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Happy holidays, everyone.